Hello, my name is Philemon River. In this video, we'll look at how to tackle a cloze test. This lesson targets the high school students, particularly the Form 4s. Now, before we move on with the lesson, I want you to look at the diagrammatic representation on your screen. Think of what it may mean. So, by the end of the lesson, a candidate should be able to define a cloze test, master the tips of tackling a cloze test, demonstrate understanding by filling gaps of a given cloze test. You must be wondering, a cloze test? What type of a test is this? A cloze test is an exercise, test, or assessment consisting of a portion of a language with certain words omitted, where the participant is asked to supply the most appropriate missing language item or word. Cloze tests are presented in form of a passage. That is why they are sometimes called broken passages. However, providing the most appropriate word might be challenging. This is because cloze tests require the ability to understand context and vocabulary in order to identify the correct language, word, or part of speech that belongs in the gaps or blanks. In simple terms, they measure reading comprehension. The test is mostly administered to all the high school students, and the level of difficulty varies from one grade or one form to another. Here is a sample cloze test. So how do you go about filling in the gaps in a cloze test? Here are some of the tips. 1. Read the whole passage several times. 2. Interpret information given in its context. 3. Ensure you understand the passage through that interpretation. 4. For each gap, try to work out the full meaning of the sentence. 5. Read the sentence before and after the gap. And finally, understand the word classes and how they are used in the sentence. Look at this example, and you may try to work it out. Jonah dash down the stairs, bumping along like a quarter in a tumbling dryer. The possible words could be A. Tumbled, B. Fell, C. Dropped. Which could be the most appropriate word in that gap? Did you get this? The hint was tumbling dryer. Now, what do you need to do when filling the gaps? 1. Ensure you write one word. This is because most of the cloze tests ask you to supply the gap with the most appropriate word, not words. 2. Use the correct spelling. 3. Punctuate the words correctly. 4. Use the correct tense, especially when the gap requires a verb. And lastly, study the tone of the passage. This will help you to come up with the most appropriate word, especially a gap which requires an adjective. Look at this simple cloze test and try to fill in the gaps. You may pause the video so that you do the exercise. Did you have the following words? Okay, that is good. You can see how simple a cloze test can be. Now let's recap what we've discussed so far. What is a cloze test? We have said that a cloze test is a test or an exercise or an assessment consisting of a portion of a language which has been omitted and requires a participant to fill in the most appropriate missing word or language item. We've also looked at some of the tips of how you can go about filling in the gaps in a cloze test. Some of them are: read the whole passage several times, interpret information given in its context, ensure you understand the passage through that interpretation, and for each gap ensure that you work out the full meaning of the sentence. We've also looked at how to fill in the gaps, what you need to do. And we've said that, first of all, write one word, because cloze tests require you to supply the gap with one word, not two. Number two, we've said it is important that you use the correct spelling. 3. Punctuate the words correctly. 4. Use correct tense, especially verbs. And lastly, study the tone of the passage, for this might help you to come up with the most appropriate word, especially adjectives. Remember to always observe the tips that I've shared with you. Until next time, I wish you all the best. Goodbye.